So just so that I can understand a little bit better the legal framework in the USA. So federal cases, are they cases that are those criminal cases always, or is it a certain type of cases that go to federal court, or do they all escalate up to the federal level where the Supreme Court is? How does it work?
Okay, so the way it works in the United States is basically established on three separate, three equal branches of government, but they're separate but co-equal. And it's pretty much the landscape on all levels. So when you start looking at the way that the United States government is established, you have the federal government, which has jurisdiction, of course, over the entire country. Then you have state government, which is the body that governs the state statutes of each state. Then you have the county level, and then some states, they don't necessarily have counties. They have what are called parishes or boroughs, and then you have this the city, the local level, which are municipalities, cities. So you have the city, the county, the state, and then the federal government. So say, for instance, an individual has an issue, a legal issue on the city level, just a dispute with, say, a neighbor, and they want to get relief. They'll file a lawsuit, and it goes to the city court for a city municipal judge to decide that matter. If they feel that they are not getting relief, they can appeal it to the county level. And then if they don't get the relief in the county level, they can appeal it to the state level. And then subsequently they can appeal it to the federal level, in which that is the ultimate
authority
branch or level that you can go. Now, in legal cases in the United States, you have two types of legal brackets you can be in. You can either have a civil issue, or you can have a criminal issue. Yes. Those are the only two differences. So the office that I work with, we only deal with criminal issues. So on the federal level, you have, and all federal judges, they can hear both. They can hear civil cases, and they can also hear criminal cases to have those cases adjudicated. But there are different rules, of course, because criminal cases, basically, you have a complainant or a plaintiff that brings the case. And so the burden of proving the case is on the plaintiff. And then you have the defendant, who is the person that the complaint is against. Mm-hmm. And then they defend themselves. And the result of a civil case is just whether or not the plaintiff prevails and they get a judgment in favor to them, which in most instances involve some type of monetary compensation. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or the defendant, if that defendant wins, then of course they are adjudicated from the case that was brought against them. And then the plaintiff, they're responsible for paying the expenses for that person to having to defend themselves.
Okay.
So in the criminal side, you have a criminal violation of law, whether of city law, county law, state, or federal. So a person violates the law, they get charged by that local or federal entity that brings the charge. The officers or detectives or FBI or whatever level that this offense occurred, then it goes to the prosecutors, and then the prosecutors make a determination whether or not to actually bring the formal charges and indict this person, so they can start the criminal judicial action against that person. Then that person has to appear in court, and the charges are read to them, and then they plead either guilty or not guilty, and then the process starts. And in most instances in a civil case, then it comes up the issue of a bond, whether they're going to be detained
Yes.
until that case actually goes into court, or if they will be given a bond. And sometimes it's a property bond, a cash bond, or sometimes people are released on their own recognizance. So it's that's kind of how that system sets up.
And so at the point where a typical case comes to you, at that point, is it like state funded typically, or is it sometimes state funded, sometimes the party are funding it themselves?
Okay, so when you say funded, okay, when you're dealing with a criminal case, the only issue of funding comes about as it pertains to the defendant, in a criminal case. If a person is charged with an offense, then it is the government that's bringing that charge against them. It could be the state, it could be the county, or it could be the federal government that's bringing that case against them, and in a criminal case. And then that defendant is responsible for defending themselves against these charges. Now, in the United States, if a person has no money, if they are deemed by the court as being indigent, then they are entitled to representation, under the Constitution. And so then at that point, the judge will appoint a counsel for the defendant. And so when counsel is appointed to them, then the government actually pays for the representation for that individual. That individual doesn't have to incur any cost.
I see.
And so, then that person is responsible for, then the legal team is responsible for defending that person. And it's not just, they just get a lawyer. Under the Constitution, they are entitled to competent, zealous defense.
Okay.
So at the point where they get an attorney, and the attorney is just going through the motions and they're not really applying themselves, that defendant has a right to go before the judge and saying, like, look, this person doesn't have my best interest and they're not doing anything on my behalf. And then at that point, they can file a motion to have new counsel assigned to them, because the Constitution, it doesn't just guarantee them the right to counsel, but it has to be competent and zealous.
And does that happen in practice, in your experience, that people do midway decide? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. All the time. I mean, there are situations where people actually go all the way through trial. And then at the conclusion, if they're guilty, if they're found guilty, for instance, and then a penalty is imposed upon them, and they don't like the result because they feel that their attorney didn't listen to them, didn't represent them, then they can file a motion of relief. And basically what they do is they attack the attorney, the defense team, saying that they had counsel, but they had ineffective assistance of counsel. And so that's one of the first stages of filing an appeal. It's saying that, yes, I had an attorney and I had a legal team, but they were incompetent.
Because what I'm thinking is that, like, so the type of cases that come to you, your clients are pretty desperate people, and at times they can't even maybe afford proper defense, so they're having to rely on.
The only people that we represent in the public defender system, we only represent indigent people.
Wow.
Now, it's kind of complicated, because there are affluent people that we represent, but the government may be charging them with fraud or theft, or so they got their property by illegal means, like they're a drug dealer or whatever, and so they may be very wealthy.
They can't access their funds.
The government connects with the case that you got these funds illegal, so we're going to seize them. And at the point that they seize their funds, now they become indigent.
I see.
But they're very influential people and they're very prestigious. And these are the most difficult people to deal with in many instances, because they feel so entitled.
So how is it, like, there must be a huge burden of responsibility on your shoulder. How do you actually cope with that on a daily basis? And also, how easy is it to gain the trust of your clients as well? Because they may be in a situation where they don't trust the whole system.
Well, when you're dealing with criminal cases, just in general, no one wants to be charged with a crime on any level, because now this is a very serious matter, because you're dealing with two things that can be taken from you. First and foremost, your freedom, and then secondly, your property. And so these are the things that are at risk when you go into the judicial system with charges, whether they're civil or whether they're criminal. If it's a civil case brought against you, then the person bringing that civil case against you, they're trying to get monetary relief. So they're coming for your assets. And so and then if it's the criminal part of it, of course they're coming for your liberty. And so the matter, if it goes to court, is serious. And if a person does not take it serious, then it's most likely that they're going to be found liable, or they're going to be found guilty, liable in a civil case, and they're going to be found guilty in a criminal case. And those results are always bad results. So yes, it is very serious. It's when you get served with a summons to appear in court or a subpoena to appear in court, it's not a casual thing, because the document itself says you are hereby ordered to appear.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, "Oh, we're requesting your appearance." No, it's an order. Yeah, and then if you violate that order, you're held in contempt of court. At which time, then now even in a civil matter, if you get served with a summons to appear in court on a civil matter, and if you refuse to appear, one or two things are going to happen, or both. Number one, they can make the judgment against you without you even being there. Particularly in a civil case. A lot of people that file civil motions, they want that. If you don't show up, then the judgment is going to be ordered against you. And then you're also subject to being in contempt of court because you were summoned to that particular court. And in most instances, in civil instances, they don't follow up on that because the plaintiff is satisfied because they got the judgment and now they're in your pocket. And so the court doesn't care. And there's so many of those cases, they don't follow up on it in many instances civilly. Criminally, if you don't show up, then they will issue a warrant, and law enforcement will be actively looking for you. And then you go into a database nationally where there is a BOLO, be on the lookout for you, or a warrant that's in all the systems, and you get stopped for just a minor traffic violation. They run your name, and boom, that warrant pops up, and at that point, they take you into custody.